Oh, look, I actually get quite pissed off about it because, you know, people think culture is like fluffy ducks and kisses.
Yes.
And I'm like, no, like, have we met? Like, that is not who I am. This is like a strategic lever that we pull in order to deliver on this promise
Yes.
of this change. We're using $100 million of the company's money to get this fucking thing done. And you are leaving out a huge piece of the strategy by not looking at what it means for the culture. Like, what is the ask of our people and are they up for it? And what needs to be true in order for them to go, fuck, I'm in.
Welcome to the Melding Muse podcast. Melding art and design, entrepreneurship, music, fashion, film, sports, gaming, and whatever's in between. We exist to showcase extraordinary people to inspire the next generation of creatives and leaders.
My guest today is EMMA KIRKMAN, culture change and transformation coach, mama, powerlifter, and well-being advocate. We talked about her journey of discovery, both for her career, but also her life's purpose. We cover company culture, hiring for the future, AI, fostering innovation, and a bunch more. If you're interested in design, EX, tech, business, and people and culture, this episode will be insightful for you.
EMMA KIRKMAN, welcome to the Melding Muse podcast. How are you doing, my friend?
Thank you, Esty. It's been a long time between drinks.
Long as fucking time is about, right? So cheers. Although
Cheers.
you're not drinking, which, by the way, kudos to you for doing this challenge. Tell me a bit about this challenge.
So have you not heard of it?
No.
It's a trend that's been around a while. But you heathen, like I'm just looking at that vodka out the corner of my eye, like. Nah. So I'm doing 75 hard.
Okay.
And basically for 75 days, you've got to complete a set of actions.
Okay.
And if you get to an end of a day and you haven't completed all those actions, you go back to day one. So I'm day 24 today. So don't let me fall off the wagon, you fucker.
I'm gonna keep this beautiful bottle of cannabis vodka away from you, which I saved for this episode. But I'm happy that you stick with it. I'm also do those types of challenges every now and then. I do Sober October. And it's nothing worse than your friends tempting you the whole entire month. So I'm not going to tempt you anymore.
Thank you.
Stick to the water.
Or the Coca-Cola.
Or the Coca-Cola. But how you been? Long time no see.
I was thinking on the way here, when was the last time I actually saw you? What year?
I think that's years and years
yeah.
ago. But you're always a party. So when I started this podcast, I was like, who am I going to speak to about things like HR and growing businesses and stuff like that? And you are the first person that popped to my mind, because even though I met you in the beginning of my career, I think the team that Orion had at that time really made an impact in terms of how I saw HR and the impact that it had on a business. So that's why I wanted to have you here.
Oh, thank you.
You and Ryan Giese had forever changed my life in terms of how I saw a company culture and all the things HR related.
Oh, shit, Geese, man. I love him. Yeah, that would make a cool... Actually, maybe we can do a follow-up episode. Me, you and Giese and the weed vodka.
Oh, bruh. That would be incredible. Because you guys, your team, put the best parties, the best corporate parties I've ever been to is the mastermind of that was Ryan Giese and you guys, because it's just...
He's still the man. He knows how to bring people together.
Yes,
like nothing's changed there. Like I think some of us have like started to tone it down as we get older, but not him. He's like ramping up.
No, he's crazy. Shout out Ryan Giese if you're watching this. I want to start with when I approached you for the podcast and you were like, fuck yeah, I'm keen. And I said to you, hey, look, we haven't seen you for a long time. So give me something that you've been working on, so I don't have to just go through the LinkedIn or whatever that you're working on, so we can, get some topics or stuff. And you said, here's all the prep you need. I'm just a badass bitch over here trying to live her best life. And I fucking love that. So you're living your life, which is fucking amazing. Tell me about what's been the last couple of years for you in terms of your career, your life. What's been happening?
Man, where do we start? I mean, the timing of this podcast and the timing of you approaching me is interesting because I'm actually in the midst of a bit of a personal growth spurt. I'm working on a bit of it's not a personal rebrand, but just like a stop and take stock. And actually, I've got a personal branding photo shoot booked in a few weeks' time, and I wanted to work with someone that was a little bit creative and didn't just take like naff headshots. And I was trying to explain to her the kind of work I do so she could capture my essence and an understanding. And she's like, cool. And I'm not sure she got it, but she said, "Oh, look, just break it down to a soundbite." And I just did a more polite version of the one that I gave you. I just said, "Look, I'm just trying to live Ikigai." Do you know what Ikigai is?
No. Ikigai. Yeah.
Ikigai,
The Japanese, yes.
Yeah, Japanese for purpose.
Yes. That book is incredible.
Isn't it? And it's actually the screensaver on my phone. And so her and I were having a Zoom call, and I said, Ikigai, and I was, scrambling for my phone so I could show her on the screen the homepage. And she said, stop. And then she pulled out from under her computer and held it up. It was the Ikigai book.
Yeah.
So and I instantly knew that she was going to be my vibe. And I guess, that's ultimately what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to find that perfect sweet spot of how do I use my strengths and my gifts but live like a really extraordinary life. And, I turned 47 this year, and I know I look good, right? And I always thought in my 40s I'd have my shit sorted, but I definitely have more questions than ever. So I'm just in pursuit of, what that ultimate life looks like. And, certainly becoming a parent. So since I last saw you, I procreated, and I am the mother of a 4-year-old. And look, that is just like a seismic change. I think I had these deluded visions of this child's going to fit into my life, and and it's just not that at all. And, she, it was a traumatic pregnancy in that she arrived 3 months early, and we spent 87 days in, intensive and special care with her, and we not long got a home. Then that first pandemic came, and so I was like, who the fuck am I now? And I've asked that question a few times, and so at the moment I'm in this season of it's not so much a rediscovery, but it's I'm just going to drill it down to what are the most important things to me. And, and that's what I meant by, I'm naturally attracted to other fellow badass bitches who are ambitious, have big dreams, but don't want that at the cost of their health or their relationship or stuff like that. And look, it's a science and an art all in one thing. And, when I was working with this personal brand photographer getting ready for my shoot, she was asking me, what do I value? And I said, I love that question because, I'm a certified coach, and we're supposed to have our shit sorted in this department, right? But about 3 years ago, I went deep on that inner work piece because I really just, for whatever reason, started to spin out of control a bit, in that I just couldn't anchor to anything, and just that internal feeling of upset, unfulfilled, but couldn't put my finger on it. And at the time I'd taken this job, which probably wasn't a very good fit for me, and I stayed probably longer than I should. And I started with the values work, and, I'm so freaking clear on my 3 value drivers now. And since then, when I have to make a tough decision, when I've got to work out why do I not feel good, or how do I find something that's resonate, these value drivers, I come back to that all the time. And so, I'm looking to live those values in my work. And so, through this rebrand, or, just a stronger brand around the 3 goals I've got around that are, I want to really clearly communicate my value and what I'm passionate about. I just want to be a whole person. And what I mean by that is, I am a corporate professional at the heart of it. I do work in government and not-for-profit as well, but I'm a corporate practitioner. And for a very long time, decades now, there's been this corporate Emma, and then there's personal Emma. And specifically what I mean there is that I have a real interest in wellness and a bit spiritual, and, so I'm doing the corporate work, but in the background I'm doing all this stuff. And I just want to bring the two together. I want to be this cohesive person because so much about, I work in change and transformation now, specifically culture transformation, and change is hard for people, right? And, what you have to call on to move an organization through change is pretty much the same for people going through personal change. And people are traumatized by change. They have baggage. They've got mindset, all the things. And, there's so much about those two, I guess, spheres that are related. So, through what I'm trying to do at the moment, I just want to bring that together. And then the other piece I'm really trying to do is spin a bit harder into, I've been experimenting for about 12 months now with digital content creation. So I ran an experiment with some podcast episodes, launched a course, got some digital products, things like that. You know, because I'd like to eventually get away from selling my time for money. You know, like one of the value drivers I just talked about is freedom, like agency, choice, autonomy, but also time, location, financial, all those things. And, you know, I thought that digital content was a good way to go for that. But also I'm looking for where are those strategic partnerships or those alliances with like-minded people that we could just like get amazing fucking shit done for organizations, you know, in a way that feels good for us, but also delivers the value.
Yeah.
So, you know, like fortunately the upside of being, you know, a little bit older now is that even though I have a lot of questions, big life questions, is that I'm well resourced for that. Like, like I did flail for a little while a couple of years ago, but I was like, no, you know, I'm resourced up to sort this out. So, you know, I've been working ever since I left Orion. I've been working for myself, you know, and I've had ups and downs. You know, working for yourself is hard. People do say, "Oh, you're so lucky. You've got so much flexibility," and I'm like, "Yeah, but that comes with compromise. Yeah, at a price and with a compromise because you know you got to worry about all the things end to end when you run a business, like the old payroll, just dropping the money in your account once a fortnight or once a month. Like you're responsible for that." Now. So like I tried to go back in-house and it's, you know, it wasn't a good fit for me because of that freedom piece. Also what I love about working for myself and being, you know, I'm a multi-passionate portfolio worker, so I have a lot of diverse interests and I like working with different clients and that keeps my skills at the edge, you know, and a huge part of my value and my offer is that I work at the edge. And I think sometimes when I've stood in one place for too long, like I lose something there. And so there's the second value driver that gets compromised, which is growth for me. I love voracious learner, have, you know, always been that. And yeah, my third personal value driver is around well-being. So I want to be physically, mentally like strong, you know, and since we last spoke, I actually took up competition powerlifting.
Awesome.
And competed in the World Champs in Italy last year for Team New Zealand. Yeah,
wow,
so
that's awesome. Good on you.
That was just a fucking fluke that I got on that team. With all due respect to myself and the effort that went in, but you know, like I think there's such a relationship between physical strength and mental strength.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, we talked about it in the first episode with Ward as well as we both sort of feel that that's a non-negotiable for life, pretty much.
Yeah,
and like you said, when you go through these journeys of rediscovering and you know, sometimes you don't feel well and you don't feel in place and stuff. And one way to navigate out of that is definitely physical struggle, doing something hard, doing something physical. 100% agree with you on that front.
And the discipline that cultivates, because
100%.
You know, it's funny because I was talking to a girlfriend and I was like, oh, because I'm injured at the moment. I had a lapse of concentration doing one deadlift, damaged a disc in my back, prolapsed my bladder. I'll heal from both, but I'm 10 weeks post-injury, so I'll miss qualifying champs and stuff this year. But it was funny that just that one knock-on effect to my habit system created dominoes everywhere. So I started to eat like shit. That one glass of wine turns into four, sleeping, like the clarity goes. And so I knew, this is my fourth time doing 75 hard. And so I knew I was like, I've got to drop into a structure because that
right away,
that anchors me. Anyway, so my friend was like, oh gosh, weight's piling on, perimenopause, you know. I was like, hey, I'm starting 75 hard on Monday. She's like, what's that? I sent her the list. She's like, why do you have to do things so psycho all the time? And I'm like, well, I guess it is a tiny bit extreme, but for me, it's like that's how I come back to myself.
Right. It keeps you anchored, like sort of,
the clarity's returned, the energy's returned. I'm fueling with I'm not counting calories on macros. I'm fueling with good nutrition. Yeah, I know I've got a shitty ass Coca-Cola, but you know, whatever's. You know, like, so for me, that kind of structure and rigor works. I know it's not for everyone, but.
Yeah, no, for sure. But it definitely fits your personality. And there's people that operate in different ways, right? For me, it's the same as you. People say that I like to play the game in goat mode because I kind of like to go, I like to go kind of like you from 0 to 100 in many things that I do. But that's mainly because of the same thing. I need something that anchors me. That's something that's difficult. And I mean, this is exactly that, right? Like, it gets to a point where you might feel comfortable doing something, and it's like, I need something that makes me feel uncomfortable, so that growth aspect, not only in the professional life, because I do that as well in the professional side, but also on the personal side, that keeps me on my toes. And like you said, it's not for everybody. Like this challenge that you're doing, definitely not for everybody. Most people probably drop out real quick. But I think we are in sync in that whole aspect around building habits. And what you said happened to me exactly the same. I'm doing BFT, which really put me in a different level in terms of fitness, and I injured my calf going too hard. But that alone put me out for 2 weeks, and you see the change right away. It's like a gap just opens up, and there's all these things that happen on my mind that, you know, I struggle with a lot. So that keeps me going. If I don't, like you said, find something that anchors me, you can start going into these loops of finding different destructive habits to fill in that gap.
Yeah.
But so happy to hear all these things from you. I mean, your attitude is always been like that. So you always being this sort of, what is the way to put it? This wild soul that should not be contained. And that's what I feel with your attitude and the way that you approach life. So I'm super glad that you went through this introspection, and that you keep finding whatever fulfills you. And if it needs to some drastic change to happen, to be prepared to be doing that change, you know. And of course, the value that you bring to any organization is just going to be incredible.
Thank you.
So I'm happy that you're doing all these things with your life. So let me talk to you about some of the stuff that you're working on, because your work is also pretty interesting. And you are currently what you call employee experience designer, which is something that I never heard of before. I met you, by the way. It's something that I was like, wait, what? This is HR, is not HR. And then as the more I started looking into it, especially now for the podcast, I'm a user experience designer. And of course, now that when you start stepping out a little bit from the user experience, user interface, just a user interacting with a product, you start looking at it from a more macro level in terms of a holistic experience of a service. And it has a lot of overlaps, because at the end of the day, it's an entire journey that is centered on a human. And I'm guessing that's your perspective in terms of the way you approach employee experience.
Well, we look to you. We look to your profession and your discipline. We learnt that from you. So I guess my specialism is around culture change and transformation, and then creating, compelling employee experience is one part of that. But yes, we 100% borrow from customer experience, UX, agile. How do you put the human at the center of everything you do? And, I did have a bit of a crisis number 5. I catalogue them, you see. I did, towards the tail end of my time at Orion Health? I can't remember. It was around that time. I fundamentally didn't feel good about the work I was doing. That was a tough environment though, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I think we can both agree that was a tough environment, but just fundamentally as a practitioner, I just knew something wasn't right, wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't in flow. I didn't have the depth of personal insights that I can get really quickly now. I guess it was a yuck feeling and just feeling shit. And that began the reimagination of my career, is that I knew that was when the future of work employee experience was emerging here in New Zealand. And, that became my career plan was, okay, I need to get good at this stuff. It resonated too. And I spent 5 or 6 years sitting outside the people and culture function. So I sat in the customer experience teams, or, I sat in the transformation office.
Right.
And shit, what an eye-opener that was, because outside looking at all the products and frameworks that I was creating and the way that they get pushed out to the business, when you're sitting on the other side of that and you're you're trying to drive a team and hit those deadlines, and then HR hits you with a 48-page playbook around here's the culture response plan. You're like, and you're getting your ass burnt in every steerco meeting because you're behind, right? And you're like, what? I don't have time to read this crap. So it was such an eye-opener from an empathy point of view to be like, oh, now I understand why leaders never did any of the stuff that I gave them. So, you know, it was a very uncomfortable period of time for me because essentially I guess I was unstitching everything that I thought was truth around the practice of people and culture and organizational development and all those sorts of things. And so it was a painful time, but I just took one little hurdle at a time, I guess. And then I did have some other things happen in life around that time. My dad passed away and I'd spent quite a bit of time, my now husband and I got married too since I last saw you. We're going backwards and forwards as Dad came to the end of his journey, and we were on the flight from Sydney back to Auckland, and my husband's just watching his movie with his headphones on or whatever, and I just had this profound realization that now is the time to do something on my own. And so I just tapped him on the shoulder and I said, I'm resigning from my job on Monday. And he's like, okay, and put his headphones back on when we got home. And I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do or what it looks like, but I just, you know, and I've actually had that for a really long time.
Okay.
That, like, I think back to my 20s, like I had early 20s, I just knew I wanted something bigger, better, that made a difference, that lit me up every day. Like I just, in my DNA somewhere, and it's like, neither of my parents were ambitious. I didn't mix with a lot of business. Like I don't know where it came from. But if I think about a lot of the content I was consuming at the time, it was like a lot of Tony Robbins, a lot of NLP. So I was always nurturing.
Right.
Like if I look back in time, like I still can't scroll past Tony Robbins content if it comes up in my feed. Like he's a fucking OG. Like he feels like, now that I'm in my calmer era, he's so over the top. But like a lot of the stuff, like he fed that the part of my soul. And, you know, so like looking back, it's like I didn't know how to listen to that calling. I mean that in a completely non-religious way, but I didn't know how to understand it, interpret or explore it.
Right.
So I'm just like, fuck, I wish I knew what I knew now back then, but 2020 hindsight.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's incredible. Walk me through, because a lot of the times you talk about HR and the impact that it has in organization. And like I mentioned, then some of the companies that I work for, they vary widely. You know, some are startups, and therefore the culture is slightly different. Some are big corporates. Culture is slightly different. Can you walk us through, like, I actually want to hear from you, like examples of small little changes that you have seen that have made a tremendous impact in an organization from the people perspective, from the employee experience perspective? The
first big light bulb for me was harnessing like the data or first going and getting the data and insight.
Right. I was going to ask you about that as well. Okay.
But then actually doing something with it. And I don't just mean everybody do an engagement survey. I mean really go and do some discovery, you know. And I learned, this was the gift of working on transformations across 2 banks, not sitting in people and culture. And I worked with CX designers. I saw them interfacing with customers during focus groups. Like it was just such an amazing mentoring experience for me. So it taught me how to apply those same principles to the employee experience. So look for the pain points and the friction points, you know, see if you can design for those, or look, and also equally look for the bright spots that you can amplify, you know. So I would use those to steer me in the right direction for what should we work on. And then slice off that journey and map it and work with people to see how we could create a better experience with less friction and more, you know, moments of truth or moments of delight for people as they move through that journey. So like that probably sounds very similar to how you work.
Very similar to how we would interpret that as well. But you talk about the data part, the quantitative data, and then obviously going out there and finding the actual why, because when you go the service and stuff, it doesn't really... what type of other data do you guys get? Like, I'm just curious about what type of data you possibly get in terms of HR from employees. It's just surveys, or what is it exactly? Yeah, well, in terms of engagement, career development, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so at every major companies who are doing it well, at every major touch point of the employee cycle, will be collecting data to see how people are
Right.
experiencing it. Maybe some are even using like NPS style
Yes.
to
Okay. I see.
to gauge it. Or they'll be using, the heat spots on their engagement survey data to be like, oh my gosh, if we've just had massive churn, like these are the reasons why. We're about to
okay.
ramp up or scale up. We better address these or no one's going to want to come.
I see. Okay. I thought it was something. I thought it was probably something else that I was missing. But okay, that's what I initially thought that probably the data was coming from.
Yeah.
I want to I want to pick your brain about hiring the right people, because that seems to me that especially now, I work in a quite small team where every person plays quite a major role in the success of the company. And obviously fitting the right people into the right role for both parties is incredibly important. Have you done any work in terms of working with organizations to hire the right people in the first place? And then the second part of my question is around building the culture that better goes alongside that company. Of course, a startup that does tech products that iterates quite quickly needs some kind of people versus a big corporate, different type of structures, different things.
Yeah. Well, I guess it comes, one of the core things you need to work with there is like strategy. So you're hiring for, where you want to go, not necessarily where you are
right
now. And, like I was working with a technology company last year and they were about to go through, rapid onboarding blitz and from people all around the world, because for those sorts of roles, they're quite hard to get here. It's hard to get talent here in New Zealand. And, where I started with them is like I went real deep on the persona work, like what sorts of people would we be attracting. So for instance, we knew that a lot of people would be moving to New Zealand. So the needs of those people and how they experience the recruitment process and onboarding, if they're successful, is going to look very different to someone who's going to be traveling from Gleneaglen to get to the office or something like that. So, I always, whenever I present a plan around that, doing that sort of thinking, it looks very front loaded, but I'm like, it's time well spent. The more we know about the people that you're trying to attract and what their needs are and how we align that with, okay, this is the organizational performance we need these people to be able to do. Like, how is that matching up? And I think every organization likes to see that evidence of someone's either confidence and capability in its current state or that capacity or potential that could be unlocked by working in the right environment. And so, every organization has its own way of wanting to determine that, like, getting people to do assessments or presentations or create an immersive experience where they have to practice that skill in front of you or, so it's never a perfect process either. Because some people interview really well and actually just sold the sizzle. Whereas others don't interview so well, but are like.
Is there any tips that you can share in terms of trying to find those holes?
Oh God. And it's so like ironic because I interview like shit. Like I do, like, because if I'm in like that panel situation, like that just doesn't work.
Right. Okay.
It's been a long time since but pitching for a client is the same sort of thing.
It is. Yeah.
Right. So like are there any tips for,
like, to actually find, like you said, like, here's one thing, like, so you said, you're hiring for the future, for what's basically coming. So you're looking for people, and we actually do go through some stuff like this, right? You're looking for people that can proactively take initiatives. Like, some people don't actually, especially in the tech industry, they like to be told what to do and they do it, versus somebody who's proactively wanting to innovate and change things and participate in transformation of tech that we do, stuff like that. There's a different types of people. So if you want people that will step up and do that kind of stuff, is there any way that you can design your recruitment process to, you mentioned about the test and all of that kind of stuff, but you said people interview really well and then once you actually find out that they don't do it, is there any holes that you've seen that, to be able to catch that?
I think probably one of the most effective things is, and I've built it into being part of my work, is like there's company values, right?
Right.
But the company should have, what's the profile of mindset that we're looking for? And mindset to me is that choice you make to see the world in a very particular way. So the simplest example I can give is, you failed at something. What does that mean to you? So to one person, that's going to be like, oh, I got it wrong. I'm no good.
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
giving up. Or the person with the growth mindset is going to be
yes,
like,
exactly.
it was learning, it was feedback. Like, what do I do differently next time?
Yes. So that's where I was going to get into. For example, with design, there is one way that you can design a interview or actually a recruitment workflow where, and I was talking to a designer about this, is that oftentimes the best way to go about it is to design the test so that is impossible to complete.
Ooh.
Why? Because you want that person to be able to push back and say, hey, look, this design task that you're giving me, I cannot do it in 6 hours. It's impossible. But I can try to focus on this problem, which give you the most impact on this feature, on this product to deliver. So from the get-go, the design test is designed so that you have that ability to push back and say, hey, look, this is not going to work. Let's find a solution. And that's one way, for example, in terms of design, that you can figure out whether somebody is just going to agree with everything you throw at them and then do a shit job. Because if you give this test, if I give you this test and you said that you're going to do it in 4 hours, I know you're talking shit. I know you're not going to do it in 6 hours. And that helps you assess that element of it.
That's nice. And so long as it's positioned, because that could be an employee experience dipping point, because so long as that doesn't leave the person feeling like, oh, it was a gotcha, like
right.
a gotcha.
Okay, that's a good point.
But I mean, like situation-based questions are, tell me about a time that you blah, blah, blah. I guess they are effective to a point, but like part of my work when I roll into a transformation environment is usually to stand up squads, and I'll be involved in either seconding people internally or hiring new talent. And I'm always interested in like, what's a change that you implemented, or what's a metric you had something to do with, or, or even like, what are people's interests outside of their work? Like if somebody tells me, I have an Etsy site and I sell, well, fuck, like we are here to do a business transformation. You understand business. Or I try not to have a bias towards sporting people, but the person who's a freaking powerlifter, or like they understand grinding it out, discipline. They know how to grind every day in pursuit of a bigger goal. Like
100%. I didn't understand that because when I was interviewing, I always found it interesting that people find interest in the fact that I played music. And whenever I went to interviews and stuff, and there's a section that's about me, and you put like, I play in a band or whatever, and they usually try to ask me about that. I was like, tell me about your band. And I'm like, okay. And then I'll just start talking about music, and then they start asking me more and more and more, and that actually clicked after a while. The fact that, of course, they ask me about that because that basically shows them a different creative output that I generate.
Yeah. Which is important to your work.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Which is involved with my creative thinking, not just on, user experience design or whatever it is, just a creative mind being able to generate outputs. And they asked me about music. And I always thought it was interesting, but after a while, it makes sense. Oh, yeah, that's why they asked me about this, because that will contribute to my work. To your point, a sports person, mentalities, all these types of things. It's a good way to catch and hire the right people.
I went and did every few years I try and go big on some professional development, and a few years back, pre-COVID and pre-child, I took out a significant loan and went and did a residential on campus at Stanford.
Oh wow!
And that was such
an
amazing experience, because I think a huge piece is watching what other practitioners are doing to solve for these same sorts of, challenges when it comes to culture and talent. And when we had the head of the VP of data and analytics from Uber and the head of design from Facebook. So they would run a lecture on a topic, and so one of the professors would come in and then they would bring someone from industry. And so for me, that was so eye-opening, because that was the first time I understood how talent brand and company brand are actually one and the same. The way that we treat our employer brand, there's a direct correlation. I think they call it like EX equals CX.
Okay.
I think is it 2 Degrees or one of the companies here. I think the CEO says EX equals CX equals NZX, because like if you can get like the share price and the share value goes up, if you can get that right, like the two are intertwined.
That's interesting.
But like, yeah, how you measure that, recruit for it, develop it, all of that like is so you've got to be on it all the time. It's not some annual thing that you do at the end of the year. It's like the companies that are doing it well are on it all the time, and they're responding and they're adapting. They're responding and they're adapting. They don't, for most of my career being part of HR teams, earlier on in my career, you do the annual survey, and by the time we've responded, it's 6 months down the track. So actually, most of the people who responded to that survey probably don't work there anymore.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Speaking of hiring, before we move on, New Zealand is experiencing right now, I guess you can agree, maybe I'm wrong, but you can agree, is losing a lot of people to Australia. Like a lot of, I'm saying this anecdotally from people I know, people in the industry I know. The talent pool's getting smaller.
Yeah.
There's a lot of professionals, especially in the tech field, that just moving to Australia. Yeah. Better jobs, obviously better remuneration and quality of life.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Like, what do you see New Zealand failing to offer?
Well, I mean, if I anecdotally, similar to you, like if I did a straw man around my immediate orbit now, like it does like the REM plays a strong part in their decision to, like my stepdaughter's she's been there almost a year now, moved to the Gold Coast for that exact. Like there's just more abundant opportunities, and and it's like it's crunch time here in New Zealand at the moment, like financially challenging for everybody, and organizations just simply won't be able to compete with that.
Yeah, I'm finding that as well. And I trying to think what you can possibly do, but of course there's a lot of layoff, people losing their jobs, and of course Australia just looks like a better option for a lot of people.
From my perspective is that, like I'm considering pivoting part of my strategy for my own business to start working more broadly across the ditch, because, I work on big transformations and they're simply not happening.
Yeah, that's
here.
right.
Yeah. So like even from
have you thought about like a plan to do that?
Yeah. So I'm reconnecting with so obviously I'm from Sydney, born and raised. So I'm just reconnecting with my Australian network at the moment. And obviously New Zealand will stay home for me because our farm is here, and, Bon will go to school here, my little 4-year-old. So for me it would have to, or for our family, it would have to be, majority working remotely, and then, maybe doing, a week or two over there if I had to. But yeah, that's definitely part of my sales strategy, and, like, because things aren't dropping into the funnel like they were
100%
a couple of years ago.
It's quite a difficult time. Oftentimes, especially with startups, I work with startups, and it's quite interesting how startups, as an employee, there is so much room for growth, right? That's one of the reasons, like, for example, for me personally, my journey with corporates such as Orion, when I was there, I had an amazing experience there. Personally, some people had terrible experiences there, but personally I had a great experience. But it gets to a point where there was just nowhere else for me to go. Like you were just stuck in a role where there's no more growth. And therefore I decided to move to a startup. And then when I worked in a startup and also in an agency, I realized that the room for growth is a lot bigger. You can jump into responsibilities if you are like me, who is proactively just give me more. It's easier to grow. But there's businesses faces that challenge where, they grow so rapidly that, let's say somebody like me, I'm just let's say intermediate designer, and suddenly, because we're growing so fast, you need to actually step into a more senior role or start to take on more responsibility. And how do you facilitate the growth of the people in organizations that change so fast? Like what would a HR or people's team, what is something they can do to facilitate that? Because oftentimes that's neglected. It's almost like you have to learn it on your feet. And for me personally, I've been in that situation. And I think I've been able to navigate it quite well just because I had great leaders before in the past, which I actually absorb and learn a lot from. But it's not because of what the organization offered me to grow into that position.
Well, I mean, that's the $1 million question for quite a lot of startups. I've worked with a few here in New Zealand, and I think it's just often the scale of growth either catches them by surprise or they just weren't prepared for it. I mean, you can work at pace, you can deliver quickly, especially, HR functions that are working, agile or with the human-centered approach. So they're responding to the right human needs in the organization. But you don't just whip up a career frame, it's, it takes a bit of effort. It takes capacity for someone to roll that out effectively and to resource it up and all of those sorts of things. So internally, I can see how that's a challenge, but I mean, it all comes down to planning, like that tech company I told you about last year that was about to onboard heaps of people. They wanted to be ready for that. So the more that you can plan ahead for that, I guess,
right, okay,
the better. But I mean that's so common, isn't it? That you take the most technically strong person and you automatically move them into a people leadership role, and they're like, I'm introvert and I hate people. I don't want to be leading them.
That's the other thing. That's the other side of things. I mean, oftentimes you find natural leaders and they just grow into those positions and they do great. But oftentimes, I'm pretty sure you have been in this position where you've been managed by somebody who just has no idea how to manage people. And in fact, on my last episode, I talked to Brendan Jarvis, who leads the Space in Between, which is a UX lab. And interestingly, he was speaking about how he was a very shit manager. He basically just, I talked about, for whatever reason, we landed on leadership. And his answer was very interesting because he was very honest. And he was around the fact that he found himself in a leadership position. He started his own business, started managing people. And he realized down the line that he was a shit manager, that he just didn't enjoy the responsibilities of being a people's leader, the responsibility of empowering people and guiding them through things. And that's also happened a lot, right? When people find themselves in a position where they might know the business domain knowledge to be in that position, but their people leader skills are not there, like the capacity to empower others, to get them to grow in their careers, and many other things a leader needs to be able to do. It's a quite challenging thing for a business as well, because oftentimes they just don't have the people.
Yeah.
From your perspective, anything that could facilitate that scenario?
So, good internal capability uplift is a good place to start.
Okay.
But then we come back to the recruitment conversation, right? So now we start looking for, because startups are when they're scrappy early stage, you need pirates, right? You need those pirates who can just, get in and get messy. Just be loose units and it's all good. So long as everybody's aligned on what the outcome and the result is, get stuck in. But then as you need to bring maturity to systems, process, bring some stability, often those pirates don't like, now we have a performance management system. Now you have to do annual REM reviews. Now you it's you have to work with a different mindset as well as try and build capability. That's a lot. If you think about what it takes to change your own personal behaviors,
100%,
layer resistance into that, or that's not my worldview, or I actually don't want to be a people leader. But actually that's the only way I can get more money. Good organizations have that individual contributor track that runs alongside the people leadership track, and you don't get, it doesn't hit you in the hip pocket because of that. If you can let people loudly and proudly be an individual contributor, a really strong technical leader, but actually they don't want to do the pastoral care, people leadership side of things, that should be okay.
I see. The company, for example, that I work with right now, I've never been in a company like this, but we have a very flat structure, which removes a lot of hierarchy. And what that means is, and I think it works brilliantly, by the way, because there's the gap between, a designer and a CEO is literally no one. You can literally approach the CEO and go, hey, look, I have this idea. and we literally within a week we can iterate on that and experiment on it. Which in big organizations, and you might know, that thing just doesn't happen. There's just so many people that just innovation, and the way I see it is innovation is sort of controlled in a way that it's just too many layers.
Yeah, definitely.
But the drawback of that is that, of course, there is because there's no layers, then there is a bit of a uncertainty as far as who's my manager, this guy, but there's too many people reporting to them, and there is that lack of connection between your people leader, or your people leader, but your manager or your leader to you, because it's just obviously spread too thin. So the way I found that is that it works really well for that, but for getting that one-on-one time and learning from somebody, it's deprioritized. Let's look at it like that. What do you think big enterprise can learn from this flat structure and vice versa? Like, is there a good in between? Because I've noticed a lot of organizations, like, from people I know that they've transformed them inside. I'm not going to say the organization's name, but they've basically started flattening their structures. What do you think is that happening? What you could learn from that?
I think, like, I am a fan of flatter structures because I think, for exactly what you just said, decision making, exchange of information, knowledge sharing, like that happens with more ease. But I think there does become a tipping point where, like, for instance, it's cool that you get to go and knock on the CEO's door, but will that scale?
Yes, exactly. That's what I mean.
Like, will that scale? So, at some point, there will be a layer in there.
Yeah. So what's that sweet spot, do you think? Like, let's say, for example, because I imagine, just thinking out loud here, I imagine a company such as, let's say, Sky New Zealand, something like that. They will have so many layers between teams that are probably unnecessary, and that's probably gonna not be as productive as, if you compare it to a startup, of course. But what is the sweet middle ground? That's what I'm trying to get to.
Well, I think Dunbar's number says, like, is it about 150? 150 is the tipping point where maybe you'd have to start looking at your org design, because now you'll start seeing people walk around the office that actually you don't know who they are. Do you know who they are? Because when you're a startup, like, everybody knows everyone, and and that's cool. But I think the tipping point is around 150. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, in my work, I see lots of bloated hierarchy, and it all comes down to, like, what is the value that role needs to be creating in order to drive the strategy, and is it being measured? Like, in the era of COVID, when everybody moved to remote working, and lots of leaders were coming out saying, this is ruining productivity, and everyone must get back to the office eventually. And it's like, well, were you measuring productivity before we went into?
That's true. That's a good point.
No. Okay. So how do you know?
How do you know? How can you benchmark it? Yeah.
And, like, if you're working in a tech company, I think work is made more visible, isn't it? It's normally you're tracking agile, you're tracking velocity and stuff like that. But, so few organizations actually track.
That's true.
KPIs,
that's very true. That's very true.
And that is part of my work. What is the work that we're working on, and how are we measuring it, and how does that actually where's that clear line of sight to strategy? Because everybody up and down the chain should be able to see how their everyday work is delivering on that big promise that we've made to customers and to shareholders, boards and things like that. I think, the deeper the hierarchy, the more lost that can get. And, and if you have ineffective leaders, like, that's just so dangerous.
There's a lot of dumb sort of processes that when you have started having structure, is like, if I'm out here, I'm just talking like very raw terms here, but, you don't dare talk to my boss. You know what I mean? Because every idea has to go through me. How do you build a culture where that shit doesn't happen? Because the way I see it, again, I'm not an expert on this, I'm just thinking it here out loud. The way I see this is that once you get to that 150 mark, and then you start adding a little bit more structure because you need it, you're going to scale and you can't really keep it flat. How do you keep that sort of innovation mindset where ideas can flow. Because that's one thing I realized, that ideas don't flow, and that innovation, things about tools, big organizations, you see that all the time. It's like, it's so hard to innovate in terms of latest tools that we can use to optimize productivity. No. It has to go through a fucking bunch of loops. And somebody who has no idea what the fuck you do has to approve it. And it just basically blocks innovation and testing. And in a startup, I walk up to my, I don't even need to do that actually. I just talk to, hey, can we get like $20 so we can try this product and see if we can, oh yeah, sweet. Okay. Yeah. Put it on that's it. We test it out. And suddenly we saved, I don't know how much time on this one particular task. And it's so easy to do it. And of course, that to me fosters that innovation and trying new things and experimenting. And when you have all these layers, that gets sort of blocked up. And if you're my boss and suddenly I have this crazy idea, I'm going to go, if I tell it to you, it's not going to get to her. I'm going to go straight to her. And then you're going to be like, what the fuck do you talk to her? It's all this corporate bullshit that happens in organizations that it's just completely unproductive. Yeah. What if you're building a culture that nurtures that, like, what are some of those things that you can start doing to activate that?
It's like, it'll all come down to like the rituals of the organization. So how people meet, how
like the ceremonies and stuff.
Things like that. But even down to like when we're shaping strategy, like, are you locking all the execs in the ivory tower, or are you bringing people from the front line to prioritize strategic items?
Right.
How are you democratizing some of those processes? That doesn't just mean the hippo, the highest paid person's opinion, gets to just contribute to make all the decisions. Like, there are some key moments in like the employee journey where you could actually invite more participation. And I mean, that for me personally as a practitioner, that has been the gift of, design thinking in my practice. So inviting people into a conversation, prototyping and ideating with them, running little experiments to see where the proof points are. And, so for me, it's like, if you want that culture of innovation, like, you have to have habits like that.
Yes.
Beyond the like once a year hackathon, it's like those consistent symbols that say to people, hey, we're a fresh thinking, continuous improvement environment. And this is how I know that's true, because I see it,
You talk about company culture, and that's really important. The first thing I want to ask you is, what makes company culture? Like, because here's one, define company culture for me, because here's my conflicting thoughts. In one way, the way I see it is that the company culture is created by the employers and is facilitated by the company, the employee. Sorry, the opposite way.
Repeat that for me.
Repeat that.
I haven't even had any of the weed.
Is the weed vodka kicking in? Sorry, my bad. That's what you're like, okay. My bad. The opposite. The company culture is created by the employee.
Yes.
No, the employer. That's what I was trying to say. But it's facilitated by the employer. But I've worked in organizations where, because there is no initiative from the employers themselves, to create this environment of creating bonds with people, or socializing and bonding over different ideas or whatever. For example, the way I see it is, because for me, the way I validate whether or not I love a role or I like it is that it needs to be challenging for me. I need to be learning and growing and blah, blah. But a big part of a job is actually your experience with people and how you fit in it, how you enjoy it, going there and talking to people and having a yarn and having drinks with people. That's part, for me personally, that's a big part of me moving to going from a role to a different role. And I've seen companies that offer one thing and not the other. And many excuses, I would call it, is that it's like, oh, well, the company culture is created by you guys. So if you guys don't do anything about it, then what can we do? You know what I mean? And oftentimes it's very hard because there's people like me, right? I do this all the time in my work, for example, which is creating spaces for people to connect, right? I take that time on my own time and just set up a dinner, set up a drink session, invite people here to my house to have a barbecue, because I think that's important as a team to connect in a personal level. So you create this bond so that if at any point, you know me, I'm pretty straightforward. If I come and talk to you, Emma, and go, dude, we need to fucking fix this because this is shit.
Yeah.
You know that I come from a different place. So making sure that those bonds are strong is super important, because then it removes all this fucking clutter from the communication point of view, where I don't have to talk to you very polite. And it's just like we connected before. You know where I come from. And it makes so much easier. And we had teams like that, and it's so much better to work with people like that. You've connected outside. They know you. They trust you. You create these connections. All that to say, what do you think a company can do to foster more of these things inside their culture?
Yeah. And I mean, like, that's so cool that you're obviously the Ryan Giese of your workplace.
I am the Ryan Giese of my workplace.
You learned from the best, from the OG.
I learned from the OG. Shout out Ryan Giese.
Oh, he's going to love this. We better make sure we send it to him. I think culture does need to start from, what's the vision and mission of this company, and therefore what sort of environment do we need to create in order for people to do their best work. And so, culture is what we repeatedly do, and that can be shit or it can be good.
Right.
Okay. And the factors that contribute to that are things like the company's values, the mindsets of the people that work, how often that they get to have, the kinds of career experiences that they want to. And, I think, like, coming back to that mindsets piece is, recruiting for the right people who are going to be able to embody that culture through the values is very important. Mindsets and both values, and beyond like posters on the wall and coffee mugs with the word splashed on
100%.
And making
like action, right? Like actual action.
But building your employee experience around those values. So if you say we're customer centric, yet none of your systems or processes support you delivering great.
100%.
You can't have those conflicting tensions that say one thing, but actually when it comes to doing work in that environment, you actually can't. So if you say one of our values is innovation and fresh thinking, like you say, but actually you've got to go through 10 layers of hierarchy.
That's true.
In order to.
Very true.
So for me, it's like being really clear about what the company's values are, the mindsets that you need to be cultivating in people so that they can do their best work in alignment with that. And that means, making sure that you clear the path for them to actually behave in that way, and often it's infrastructure blocking them, or systems and processes, or,
100%.
Going back to my Stanford experience, one of the lecturers talked about the study, and I don't know if you heard of this, where some scientists parked a car and left it like unsupervised with the doors unlocked, and waited to see like how long it would take for someone to take the money out of the ashtray and, rob it, basically, take its wheels or whatever. And they waited and they waited. Nobody broke into the car. Yet the second they smashed a window, like someone instantly came and took stuff out of the car, because the smashed window was symbolic of nobody cares about this car.
Yes.
So we may, so his point is like, don't worry about, going for big innovation. You've got to fix the broken windows. And he gave like an analogy around, he went in to do some culture transformation work for an organization, and they wanted to do this big glossy values launch and stuff like that. But actually he went and did some discovery, like the human-centered approach, and he found like the lowest scoring area was like finance. And when he got down to the nuts and bolts of it, the reason why they scored so low on their cultural profile, and so they were very unhappy, is because at month end, when they had to print off all the invoices, the photocopier didn't work properly, so it took the process like much longer than it needed to. So they're like, fuck you and your innovation program, just, you know? But like that is such a great example of organizations trying to do the big stuff, but it's the small stuff.
Yes.
You know, those moments of truth. How about if you want me to deliver value to the customers, you let me get the goddamn invoices out in time, get me a photocopy, you know? Like, so fix those broken windows before you try and do the big, innovative, glossy stuff, you know?
That's great insight. That example that you share remind me of there is this book, one of my favorite authors, Malcolm Gladwell.
Oh, tipping point. Yeah.
You know, the tipping point talks about that, like about how like the simple cleaning up of graffiti out of the subway station automatically reduce crime.
Yeah.
So it's like all these little tiny things that help absolute change.
Yeah.
Like this little thing you can do as an organization to foster innovation, to foster one thing, one other. That makes a huge difference. Like there's little actions that create a tipping point in behavior. Sometimes you don't realize. When I heard that in that book, I'm like, no way. And it's just backed by data. Like it's literally these things. And that's exactly what you just talked about.
Yeah. And like organizational symbols work in exactly the same way. So say you are interviewing with a organization, you've been on their website and it says we are collaborative, and then you go in for your interview, you can see people on whiteboards, you can see people using collaborative, like, so that symbol says to you,
that's right.
Oh, that value is embodied. This is a place where I want to be.
Thank you very much for that. I really wanted to get this out of you in terms of culture. And I want to talk to you about something completely different.
Oh God.
Because we just went to future state.
Yes. Shit, I took so many notes.
And that was interesting. I'm going to tell you what is the most interesting part, or the one thing that really did click with me. Of course, I'm a big fan of artificial intelligence. I use it on my workflows all the time, and I'm super excited about the future. Unlike some people that feel like, you know, it's the end of the world, I'm rather optimistic about it. But one thing that did like literally hit me right in the heart was this whole thing about loneliness. You remember that?
Yeah.
And what are you all that to say that I'm excited about artificial intelligence, despite the profound change that it could have for our society. And it's not like it's gonna become sentient, because I agree with him in terms of like that's not really the fear. It's just that we will grow more and more less human. We will keep growing apart from human connections and empathizing with people, and just keep making that gap bigger, because now this technology facilitates that. That's really my fear of this technology really taking off, other than, you know, like taking or reshaping roles. I think, in my view, if you're a designer, if you work in people team, if you are a business person, whatever it is that you do, what you should do right now is literally get in front of this and see how you can use this tool for your benefit. So that's not really what it worries me, but it's that part. What was the main thing that clicked for you from that conference?
I mean, yeah, the AI piece was huge. And I mean, you know, just to build on that point that you just made, is that, like, yes, the loneliness factor is a genuine risk, but we need to adapt. Like, every time our circumstances and our environments change, and there's something about our culture and the way we go about our work, whatever it is, like, we need to go through a period of adaptation. So, like, if people aren't learning how to live with AI and use it responsibly, like Noel was telling us, you know, like, I loved how I've been inside a couple of government organizations over the last couple of years, and their way of handling that is to put out blanket mandates that say we do not use AI at our organization. And part of me is like, as if people aren't using it on their personal devices, like, But I loved how Noelle, and I can't remember her surname, but she's Accenture for your listeners. She's a freaking weapon. She opened the conference with her own deep fake. I thought that was amazing.
I actually messaged her.
Me too.
Because, of course, she's Latina, right? So she represents our people out there, and she's just a fucking badass.
Yeah.
No, I totally get, like, she's at the right, like, that's why she's using AI in the right way.
But she makes it safe for her people.
She makes it safe.
We are doing like a massive disservice for helping humans in New Zealand go through that period of adaptation by just putting up the firewall and being like, whereas she, like she was saying, she creates internal sites so people can use it safely so they don't fear it. And like Professor Scott Galloway said, he was a cracker, wasn't he?
Oh,
I knew he would
awesome.
be. He said, AI isn't going to steal your job. The person who knows how to use AI is going to steal your job.
Exactly.
You know?
But the thing that got me thinking though was Holloway, talk about loneliness and stuff. And I 100% agree with you in that. My fear though is that, we've seen this with social media. Like we know how destructive that shit is. And now I'm not saying that we should not be able to look at beautiful, funny cats online. I fucking love that. But it's that ability to adapt to that technology so that it doesn't fuck up our self-esteem and it doesn't give us anxiety and all these sort of things. We learned from that in the past, right? We've been through this transformation of all our youth getting fucked by this technology. In my mind, when he said that, I thought, fuck yeah, we have a social responsibility. How can we get on top of that with this technology? And I mean, Noel sort of touched on that, being able to use it safely. But how can we put everything in place so that it doesn't just take it to the extreme? You know what I mean? And that's the only thing that it really got me thinking around AI, because I was super excited about it. I'm like, I want to use it all the time.
Yeah.
I was just like, this morning I was looking at Google's keynote, and yesterday on OpenAI's. Now I'm so excited about AI. But that was one thing that really I never considered.
And I don't even know if you can't really pin it all on AI. Like I think it's technology.
No,
and the era of the
it's
pandemic.
not 100% AI, but it's obviously the exponential growth that this powers.
Yeah. I think it's, I mean, I have a very strong opinion around this particular topic, but around, because productivity was talked about.
Oh, yes. I had a topic about that.
But my point here is kind of related to the two, in that I think we so over-indexed on the well-being piece due to the pandemic era, is that we took away people's ability to navigate and bounce themselves out of a hole.
Right.
Like helping people resource up and self-coach and, have that intrinsic motivation to navigate themselves as opposed to rely on the organization to offer that to them. And, I find that has impacted productivity quite a bit, because now we're at the point where the second we turn up the heat just a tiny bit on the productivity side, you'll get met with it's 5:01, and if they got challenged on that, it's I'm being bullied, or it's so maybe the same similar. And I'm just riffing on this with you, is that maybe it's the same sort of thing around this era of AI. Like, what can we do to enable people to be like to use it safely and to be smarter around its application? Like, what would the world have looked like around, okay, this era of social media is coming, there's a whole generation of kids in school that are going to be impacted by that in 5 to 10 years time. What can we do to prepare them?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
We like, as humans, like, we've got the blueprint, like we've seen it. We
can probably do a much better job with this next wave.
Yeah, we could if we wanted to, but then the system, meaning big organizations like governments, have just, rather than face into it and deal with it, are like mandating, okay, we don't use that here. And basically there are repercussions and consequences if you even like experiment or get curious. And so what does that say to the mindset of somebody who's already prone to not being curious and trying new things? And, so that's like an example of the organization reinforcing the exact opposite mindset that you're wanting to cultivate. Around innovation and things like that.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this technology, to be honest. Do you use it in your workflows?
I do, yeah.
What do you use it for?
I use ChatGPT a lot, obviously. But the biggest, I guess, game changer for me was when I started to use Julius AI data visualization tool. So I do a lot of workshops. So that's a lot of freaking post-it notes.
Yeah.
So being able to, that's like days of work.
I know.
That has saved me.
Yeah.
Days and days.
That's also. Have you seen the latest
Yeah.
GPT 4.0
No.
update? Dude, that is crazy.
Really?
Yes, because I use it a lot too, and to do stuff like that. What you're saying, data analysis, one, but also I use it a lot. Like sometimes, you gotta just to give you an example. Sometimes you got a visualization of a sort of like an interface, and I just need literally there's so much information. I just need the text from this to input it into a UI or whatever for a product. You just feed that image to ChatGPT and go, give me this separated by a comma. A job that took 25 minutes of dumb just copying and pasting, it just becomes like that.
Crazy.
And with the new update, what it does is it literally, you can show anything that you're seeing to ChatGPT. So essentially, you turn your camera on and you can literally, if you have a board full of Post-it notes, you can literally talk to ChatGPT on your phone. Just go, hey, ChatGPT, I'm here in a workshop with an organization that does this. We've been discussing this. I've taken a bunch of notes. We put it in this board, these quadrants. I'm going to show you what those are. And can you please process this for me and visualize it? And then you just basically with your phone, show it with the camera.
Shut up.
And this fucking thing just basically spits it out, generates insights for you, gives you an output. It's just fucking crazy. It's like the new improvements are just getting better and better.
I need to get all over that.
It's crazy. It's getting crazy. And of course, in other spaces like, with video, Google Keynote today showed their own version of the video prompt to video generator. Crazy. Like the amount of I know creators out there are getting very scared about this, but I see it as an opportunity to create in a faster way that's ever been. You can literally conceptualize an entire film that you always wanted to put out, but it takes so much work like this.
Amazing.
So it's so much opportunity out there that I feel that if you are curious about this and you really want to challenge yourself, get in front of this and just jump on it, experiment with it, see how you can implement it in your workflow. It's so easy, like Google today, they put a bunch of different systems out there that are now improved and free. Anyone can access them. So my recommendation for anybody listening is to go out there and try it. And whatever, even if you're a farmer, try this shit because it will definitely help you. All that to also connected to productivity, which is the last thing I want to talk to you about as well. Because it's a big thing for
New Zealand,
for organizations, for everybody, right? And Ian from Slack talked about that as well. I talked to Brendan about that as well in my last podcast. And we, of course, connected back to AI. But one thing that we discussed with him, and it's true, is that, productivity for productivity's sake doesn't do anybody any good. Sometimes you want to micromanage your own time, for example, to be productive, and then you end up just fucking spending so much time
looking at cats,
dealing with your fucking calendar or some shit. Productivity is a big thing for businesses. How can businesses empower employees? Fuck.
I was with you. Do you know I decoded it? I understood.
This vodka is getting so strong. You get me, right? How can employers empower employees to be more productive?
Well, I mean, first of all, what are we measuring? It comes back to that strategy execution. What is it that we're asking people to be?
What do you think is the main thing that should be measured to generate impact?
Well, what's a team's objectives? What's a function's objectives? What are your objectives? What are you being measured on?
Right, okay.
And what is that in connection to? Because also teams can spin off and make up a whole bunch of OKRs or goals.
Yeah.
And it's oh, cool, but that's way over here, way away from our strategy. So for me, first of all, what's the stuff that we need people to actually be executing on? Then it comes down to the culture and the ways of working.
Okay.
How do you create the environment so that people can execute on
right.
that work.
Okay, let's break it down into two, because you mentioned two things. So the first one is like, what is your objective?
Yeah.
Right? And the first thing is like, that comes to my mind is, okay, you're a organization that works very fast. You're iterating quickly, that everything is changing so rapidly that you have to continuously innovate. And oftentimes teams get spread so thin because there's so many things that they need to be working on. And I'm not sure this happens in big organizations, but definitely the companies I've worked for, where it's like a startup, right? There's so many initiatives happening at the same time because, we got to grow, we got to scale, we got this technology, blah, blah, blah. How can one thing I struggle with a lot is that when there's so many things on the table, it's hard to prioritize and be productive, right? Because you spread so thin that it's hard to focus on one thing. So in a situation like that, where your objective is literally to innovate, to do your day-to-day work, business as usual work, like as an organization, how can you facilitate productivity along those fronts? That's one way, and that's one thing. And then the second thing is, how do you measure that?
Well, I mean, for the first part there, you kind of answered your own questions. We're spread so thin. There's so many things we've got to do.
Yeah.
Like, you start there.
Okay.
Because strategy is also what you don't do.
Good point.
So what prioritization protocols need to be activated? If you put your hand up and you're like, I'm at capacity, this is how much capacity I've got to deliver on these things. Where do you want me to work? Like the team should be talking about
That's a very good point.
that regularly, and then you can build consensus around like what's the most important things for us to be
working on.
And I mean every organization needs to have its like agreed goal setting mechanism. So whether it be through agile velocity or OKRs or KPIs or something like that, like there needs to be kind of a unified way around how we set people up to visualize the work and measure it and know what great looks like, and making sure that we've got alignment. But I mean, if you're working with a product owner in your squad, like there's somebody that's got their eye on the value and the output that needs to be created by that.
And so you focus on that instead of just working on a bunch of stuff. Just get clarification.
Yeah.
Actually, you mentioned that, and one way that I've learned that you can do that is by doing impact mapping, right?
Yeah.
And the problem with that I found, especially in small organizations, is that because of the amount of, sometimes you're working in so fast that stuff, there's companies I work for where they have even systems in place, like they use this thing called Lattice, I think it's called. It's like a platform.
Oh yeah. I have heard of that.
That basically allows you to, and a lot of organizations do that, right? It's like essentially it's like a company-wide goal, and they do this extensive mapping of every function in the company, how that is contributing to the company's goal or the organization's goal, right? But the problem, what I found with that is that works out for like fucking 1 month, 2 months. And then you obviously have your individual KPIs that will have an impact on that, and then all the way down the top. It's just so much fucking work.
It's the admin burden of that.
It's the admin burden that eventually just fucking breaks that in half and just go, don't have time to be mapping that shit. We need to switch directions. That thing at the top that you were working towards, that shit's changed because something happened, whatever. We need to switch directions. You know that, right? In big organizations. And then the admin work, it just gets, overwritten. And it's just, at the end of the day, nobody ever looks at that again, honestly. So I guess my question is like, is there from your perspective, what can you do? Or maybe thinking about it, maybe it's more about the people that are inside the organization that need to be be able to do that on their feet, to be able to not having, don't need all these processes and things in place, but rather you think on your feet and you go, okay, well, this is the challenge ahead. We need to deliver on this because of these reasons. These are the signals, whatever. And to execute on that, we need to do this. And because we need to do this, and this is the date that we need to be executing on, we shouldn't be working on this because this is going to reduce our capacity by 10%. And because that's not important, we should not touch that, right? And I think that's what I've realized after working through that. But it's hard because people in organizations don't want to say no. You know, it's hard for people to push back against leadership. And there's people like you and me that probably have a quite strong personality and can speak up, but there's not everybody across the organization is able to do that.
Or you get caught up in the trap of business and you don't stick your head up to be like, wait, what's happening here? You know, I mean, and that's the gift of ceremonies like sprint planning, and, you know, because that's the time where you should all lift up out of the reeds, and you don't have to put it into an app or, you know, use technology, but you should have some sort of visual aid that says, guys and gals, this is what's important, and we've agreed with our key stakeholders, so this is what we're gunning for, and this is where productivity gets unlocked, because the people closest to the work should get to determine this is how we think we're going to hit that goal.
Right.
You know, so, you know, like, and that comes back to culture, because if you're a culture of like, actually, Esty, that's a great point, but let me just go and check with 5 steering committees before we work out if you can actually do, you know, like that's,
Yeah.
you know, like, I mean, productivity, look for where those sorts of behaviors exist, you know, like that's causing major friction in productivity is, you know, decision-making and where things are bottlenecking and, you know, like, or even like I have worked on lots of agile transformations and it works sweet in the transformation tribe. The second you try and interact with people outside of the tribe, people are like, I don't fucking work like that. Like my turnaround time is 28 days and we're like, but we're working on, it's for this week's sprint, you know, like, and that's where there's clash of cultures internally, because people need to sign up to and opt into these new ways of working, and we go all in.
Yes. Actually, let me ask you about this. How are we looking with time? I think we're good.
I'm good, yeah.
That's a very good point. And one thing I've realized is after talking to people and they, you know, they look at the way that, for example, I work in the organization I work for, they go like, God damn, we couldn't do that in our organization.
Do what?
Like iterate quickly.
Right. You've got autonomy and you're empowered.
Yeah, like you have autonomy. You could, like, it's incredible. Like, by the way, I love my job, and that's why I'm happy where I am, because anybody in the organization could pitch an idea. We have this thing where it's like best ideas win. It's part of our values, like best ideas win. And also we have this other value which I never come across, which is disagree and champion, which means the best idea will win regardless of who it comes from. And in fact, we don't even label ideas. It's not Emma's idea and Tom's idea and this guy's idea. It's just an idea, and the best ideas win.
That makes it quite safe too, doesn't it? Like,
it is very safe. And what that does is that allows you to just be free to give out ideas and execute on them. And they actually happen very fast. I've never seen any organization turn ideas upside down so quick. Like literally I walk up to the CEO and go, hey, look, I think we should do this improvement. This would definitely help with the user experience to solve this business question. Let's do it. Put it in the sprint. 1 week later, 2 weeks later, done.
Amazing.
And you talk to other people and they go like, fuck, that would never fly. Like, would never do that. It's just so many layers and so many fluff around the processes and stuff. Oh, you know, the sprint is locked. We can't add anything else. Like, we looked at it in a way where like, okay, you know what? This actually would add a lot of impact. We just looked at that. Like, this would add a lot of impact. Would that help generate revenue? And you have these metrics as well, like generate revenue, unlock a partnership or whatever. That's the North Star to prioritize in a way. So if you can generate an idea at any point that will unlock some value in there, let's do it. What the fuck? We sit here. Hey, guys, we're changing. We're doing this. Everybody switch gears. Let's do this. Boom, done. 1 week later, hey, we signed this deal.
It's a thing, yeah.
Big organizations struggle with that. Like, there's no such thing. And especially I have a lot of, because my background is in graphic design. So I have a lot of graphic designer friends. And one thing that, for example, I always think of with those in that industry or in that sector is the fact that they don't really operate agile for the most part. And it's always like, oh, no, you can't operate agile in marketing.
Yeah. Well, HR people say the same thing.
Yeah. So
We got so much BAU that we
yes. We got so much BAU that doesn't work. You can't work like that. I'm sure you have experiences in terms of, I want to ask you two things. One is, how can you foster this culture of rapid change inside those sectors inside businesses, HR, marketing, whatever it is? How can you foster that culture in those groups? And the second part is, I just forgot it. Let's start with that.
Well, I get having, in terms of my experience as a transformation practitioner, it's being clear about that mindset piece. So if you're asking people to go about their work, choose to go about their work in a different way, you need to be clear about that.
Right.
You know, like one transformation I was on had that big BAU challenge put up constantly every corner. And ironically, it was the marketing team that came up with it, but it was awesome. It was like, we're changing the way we do BAU, not our DNA. You know, because people like were so attached to the ways of doing things. It was, even though it was like high admin burden and really bureaucratic, it's like some of the pushback was just crazy. So, you know, we went out with, this is what the choice is to look like in order for you to go about your work in a different way. But then we came in and supported that through good enablement and capability uplift. We worked with leaders and we gave them those immersive experiences that showed them how to ideate, gave them some really simple tools and playbooks for, this is how you prototype and this is how you run an experiment. And, you know, introduce them to concepts like MVP or SFD, shitty first draft. Like, give people permission to make that first thing that is a plonker. But it doesn't matter because they've now broadened their worldview around there's more than one way to do this thing. But you have to activate that at every level, you know, because quite often I'll see, you know, leadership teams sign off on this new way of working. But then I think, but how many times have you actually prototyped yourself? You're telling your teams, you know, so you've got to mean it, you've got to walk it, you've got to role model it, but you've also got to enable it. You know, so that investment in capability development and, you know, leadership and stuff like that is critical.
You can just run an experiment, because that's one thing that people don't do very often. It's like, oh, that's never going to work. It's like, how do you know? How the fuck do you know if you never tried it? Like, just do an experiment. Try this approach for a week and see how that works and see how people react. But the problem that usually people like that face is, like you just mentioned before, is a lot of pushback around people don't want to change. Like, there's so many people that resist change.
Yeah.
And people like you and me probably are very passionate about change, because change is good, it's exciting, it's new. But especially in big organizations, change is scary. You know, uncertainty is a big thing. And I don't know if you went to the last future state, 2 future states ago.
Was it the one at the theatre?
No, it was in the same place.
Oh no, I didn't go then.
There was a presentation which was brilliant. It was around leadership, and it was around how important it is for a leader to have the capacity to deal with uncertainty. And it was brilliant because, of course, for the most part, especially if you're a startup, if you're in the tech industry, uncertainty is at the forefront of every fucking thing you do, because things change so rapidly that you might be thinking you're in a growth trajectory, and guess what? You lost this or you lost that, or things change, and then suddenly you have no company. What are you going to do? So much uncertainty. Anyway, uncertainty is a big thing. So people don't deal with uncertainty really well. I don't want to change my way of working. Yeah. And it's one of those things that I always said, like, oh, fuck, how do you get these people, especially in big old organizations that have been around? You know, you got people that have been in the company for 10 years. Suddenly here comes this hot young girl that's saying, hey, we should change the way we work because agile is the new thing and we should do, and this, it's just so hard. How do you, from the core organization level, from the culture, from the business perspective, enable that change throughout the entire chain? Because one thing I've noticed as well is that, especially with talking to people, is that sometimes that change is enabled, like, you know, from the business perspective, this team is operating like this, but my team is not operating like that. So it's not even alignment throughout the entire organization. How do you deal with that?
Well, the alignment piece is huge, but my experience of working in change and transformation is people are generally, and I say people, I mean like decision makers, the key stakeholders, the governance groups, are always really focused on the technical side of the change. So we've got $170 million ERP going in, or we're changing our operating model, doing the thing. They're like so hyper-focused on the technical side of the change, they don't think about the culture side of the change. And that is like what I specialize in, is because like it's not just about the technical change. It is culture is the transformation. It's not a technology. It's the culture is the transformation.
So the culture enables that transformation.
Yes. And so everything from getting it ready to the journey that you plan. I mean, and I'm trained in traditional change management and new school, like lean change, which is a little bit of human-centered design, a little bit of agile. And, old school change management assumes that people move through change at this sequential, linear sort of fashion, and humans just don't. Like the way that you are receptive to change may be different to how I am, but we try and sheep dip people through these change experiences.
Yes.
And people start opting out. You start seeing evidence of funky behaviors. People start acting out of character, because like you say, they resist the change and they're just not with you on the journey. And so for me, switching to more of that open source change where you invite people in to participate, they've got their fingerprints all over the strategy. Like they contributed. They haven't just had this top-down thing arrive from the sky or from the moon and be like we're doing this thing now. Like culture is the transformation, no matter what the change is. Like you have to over-index on the culture. And like I would say, like it's the biggest thing that will hamstring any kind of rollout or implementation or op model change or anything like that. Like if you haven't set your culture up to be ready and then guide it through the journey and plan the journey.
Yeah.
Really think about what's the experience, using the same employee experience principles. How do we create a change experience where there's more bright spots and amplification points than there are troughs or friction points, So really knowing your personas and understanding your employee population and thinking about how can we design the best experience for them possible while including them in the process of that design, it's just going to help you get to that future state so much quicker.
That's awesome.
Oh, look, I actually get quite pissed off about it because, people think culture is like fluffy ducks and kisses.
Yes.
And I'm like, and hugs. And I'm like, no, like, have we met? Like, that is not who I am. This is like a strategic lever that we pull in order to deliver on this promise of this change. We're using $100 million of the company's money to get this fucking thing done. And you are leaving out a huge piece of the strategy by not looking at what it means for the culture. Like, what is the ask of our people and are they up for it? And what needs to be true in order for them to go, fuck, I'm in.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I've worked in places where incredibly, in order to appreciate good culture and good company culture, you have to come across shit culture.
Yeah, that's probably true,
And I've been lucky to be gone on through both. And I worked in places where the expectation was, hey, you come here, you do your fucking job, and then you have fun, whatever it is that you do elsewhere. And that's not aligned with, I'm pretty sure, your life or my life. And I always think from a empathetic point of view, like thinking, okay, if you're this business owner and the way that you approach your business execution or the way that you operate your business is, I just hire people to do this fucking job and then they can fuck off. And then that's it. I don't care about what you do in your life. You just come here and do this job. Instead of, I want to make sure that you come here and you enjoy every minute of it and you have meaning in your work. I'm just thinking out loud right now. Is there anything that connects? At the end of the day, everybody just worries about what's the impact on their wallet, like how much money they're making. And you don't have to be an expert in HR or anything like that to know that employee retention at the end of the day is a big hole in your bottom line. If you don't retain your employees, it's gonna impact your revenue at the end of the day. So I'm just thinking, like, what is it? One of those things for people that operate in that manner, where they just don't fucking care about employee experience and how people live meaningful work lives. What's one advice that would turn those skeptic people around?
First thing I would say is, where is the evidence that that is a winning formula for you?
That's a good point.
Like, where is the evidence that's saying to you, and I mean, have you interviewed every person that's left you? What's the feedback coming from candidate experience?
They most likely don't do that.
Well, I wouldn't be encouraging them to be like, let's just check that mindset because, I don't really think you're going to be around much longer if you don't change your worldview on that, because employees have more power than ever now in that way, right? Like they have choice and agency around, gone are the days where it's like you're lucky just to have a job. Like, you're a little bit more empowered now to people want to work for the visionary leader. They want to work for great cultures. They want to be in proximity of greatness. Like you and I both want to learn from awesome people. I want to be paid well. I want to be paid my value.
Yeah.
But, I walked away from a gig and left, like, it pains me to say, like, over 100K on the table because it chewed me out. It hollowed me out. I felt sick every day. I was teary every morning at the thought of slogging it out for another day for this organization, and so maybe it's an age thing, but I was like, I actually physically cannot do this anymore because I do not understand the vision, because the vision holder had left and the vision just went with them. And, it was really, I wasn't going to be able to do my best work there. And maybe it's a factor too in terms of being a contractor, like an independent contractor and a consultant, is that, okay, so I can't win here and then I'm supposed to get more gigs based on not winning here. Like, it actually became more of like, what's it going to cost me brand-wise, never mind health and well-being, like what's it going to cost me to have to suffer through this? So, I think people definitely still want to be paid at least market. I know not every organization can lead the market, but there are other ways that you can create value for that employee, like this, I mean, the article will be a little bit old now, but there's a HR thought leader called Josh Bersin. I don't know if you read any of his work, and he published a paper and the title of it was The Learning Curve is Your Earning Curve. And so actually the focus was, if you aren't enabling my development and helping me expand my skills and giving me great experiences, I know in the long term that's going to hit me in the side pocket because I'm not going to be able to progress REM-wise. I know where I am right now with my money and I'm not entitled to anymore, but in return I want you to show me a pathway where I can earn later.
Yeah. Right? I've always had that growth mindset in that whenever I found myself in that position, I'm like, well, this is definitely not taking the needle for me, and making that drastic decision, just like you have done, of changing from a work that not only is, psychologically terrible for you. And I work in places where for the first time in my entire life, I felt anxiety. Like I didn't know what anxiety was. Until I worked in a place where I felt genuine fear for things. And oftentimes I understand from people that it's just so hard to make that call that you made, to say, you know what, I just don't fucking enjoy this. And regardless of the money I'm making, I'd rather, hustle my way out of this and make less money. But I value my mental health. I value my physical health over everything else.
Yep.
I think making that connection with what does it mean to have a fulfilling life, to be happy in your work, to have meaningful work like you meant. Because that's one thing as well, is that oftentimes becomes very hard when you don't see your work having any value. And I think, I touched with Warren, the CEO of my company, in the first episode, about making an impact in the world with the work that you do, regardless of what you do. Because you might think, my work doesn't have a fucking impact in the world. It's like, well, you should reconsider that, because you should. You know, whatever it is that you do, it should have an impact, and you should be proud of what you do. And I think coming to a reconciliation with yourself about what you do is an important thing, and not being scared about the repercussions economically. Of course, everybody is different, you know, like you and me. Some people are in positions where they can't afford to leave their jobs behind. But I think the important thing is to acknowledge the fact that something's not right, and always know that there's something you can do about it.
Yeah.
There's something you can do about it, regardless of what position you are. I mean, as an immigrant coming here, not speaking a fucking word of English and working fucking horrendous jobs, the light at the end of the tunnel was that I'm doing this for a moment and I know there's something I can do about it. I just need to figure this shit out. I need to fucking learn the language first. But there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and not being comfortable with, you know, like just surviving, to just always find meaning in life. I think that's one thing that always pushed me, and obviously push the message I always give to my friends is like, you have to be doing something that you love to create that meaning in your life. And then that will manifest in so many ways, in the way you interact with people, in the way that you live your life. And like you said, I'm happy that you went through that introspection on finding your Ikigai.
Still work in progress. It's
always going to be a
work
work in progress, because you're an evolving person, right? Every time you're finding a different thing that means something in your life. So I think we've done an hour and 45 minutes. We can probably wrap it up, because we can otherwise end up keep going here until really late.
But just for the person who might be listening, like to your point around, you can't afford, like it's a monetary thing. Like when I left that cash on the table, I still made a smart move. Like I whiteboarded what needs to be true in order for a safe exit here. So safe for me was my personal brand. I'd actually poached people from other organizations. I wanted to leave them in a good place, and I made sure I had my next gig lined up. You know, so I just got to work on that.
Work on a plan.
You work on a plan. Yeah, you don't
plan.
have to be, don't in a blind fury be like, fuck you, I'm not coming back tomorrow. And, you know, like I would never do that, because I have obligations as a, you know, farm owner and a wife and a, you know, mother and all those sorts of things. But yeah, you can still make smart moves. I guess for me, it's like being clear on those value drivers that we talked about when we first started talking, but also what is your minimum standard for your life? You know, what is the minimum standard? And you never bloody drop below that.
Right.
And the second you are below your minimum standard line is like, that requires action. So, personal opinion alert.
Wow. You talk about value drivers.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah.
What are those for you?
Freedom.
Okay.
Growth and well-being.
What does well-being mean for you?
Physical, mental, spiritual, just like strong, you know, not just physically strong. I mean, I do get a lot of energy from my strength, but, you know, the inner work, you know, feeling good mentally, anxiety-free, certain, you know, like that sort of feeling. So like I do mindset work every single day.
What do you do? Like, what is it? One of the things that you do for that?
Journaling.
Okay.
I do journaling, and I do a lot of visualization and meditation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so even in my journaling practice, though, some days I'm like, I just don't want to do this. So I have a practice that matches whatever mood I'm in. So if I feel like I have a lot to say to myself, I just write until I get to the bottom of the page, and I never read it back because I don't judge what it says. Or I'm just like, I'm not in the mood for this. Okay, top 5 things that are on the top of my mind. And sometimes those, and they just like could be a couple of words per line.
Yeah.
But that reflects back to me what my inner state looks like, and then I can do something about it. If there's something not good coming through, like I've got a worry or a concern, or there's a bit of anxiety there about something, I can spot it.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, how does somebody with your mindset and how, you know, all these things that you're talking about, how do you manage? Because people like would be wondering, how do you do all these fucking things when you have a kid, you got a farm, you got a husband, like you need to obviously spend time with your family. I'm obviously not in that position yet, but I'm guessing that once you get to that position, there's so many more variables that you have to have into account. How are you navigating this life as a mother?
Fuck, man, that's a whole episode on its own. But it comes back to habits. I mean,
Okay.
if you've not read Atomic Habits by James Clear, you
need to read that.
You need to read that.
I read it.
Good.
I already read it.
I changed my life with that.
Yes. And by the way, follow up. Read Atomic Habits and then read The Power of Habit.
Oh, I haven't read that one.
Nice. Read The Power of Habit.
But it's the habit. You build it consistently, and I remove friction that might stop me from doing that habit. So when I go to bed every night, I know where the journal is. It's got a pen in it, because if I have to get up and find a bloody pen, that's a friction point, and I'm not going to do it. Yep. The other thing for me, and I cultivated this habit before Bond came along, is I try and get up really early, because it's the only part of the day that I own and no one can take it from me.
The 5 a.m. club.
Yep. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's very good.
One other tip I started experimenting with last year, and it really freaking helped, is I got an ice bath.
Yes. Cold plunge.
Yeah. I got a cold plunge. Yeah.
Do you do it in the morning?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. That bro, if you've never done a cold plunge, let me tell you something. When you freeze your dick off like that, it changes your life.
But if you start the day with something so like...
And it makes you realize how important breathing is, by the way.
Yeah, well, Wim Hof. I watched Wim Hof and Russell Brand. That's where I got the idea from, because the
Iceman.
I was training for world champs, and I also heard that it was good. So it wasn't just good for nervous system work, but for recovery. Yeah. And I swear to God, there would be some sessions, like squat sessions under the bar, where I should have been like literally on crutches or in a wheelchair the next day, but I wasn't. Yeah. But the people I'd been training with were like crawling the next day. But I would plunge straight after the session, and then again the next morning, and it was like all the inflammation went away.
That's so good. I wish I could do that. I need to do that more. I'm just making excuses why I shouldn't do it. I just need to buy that fucking thing. But I used to do it because I wanted to try it. And recovery-wise, it's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm allergic to anti-inflammatory, so for me, it's a way to recover a lot quicker. I play football and I do exercise as well. But anyway, try cold plunging, because that shit just... One thing it taught me is, of course, the recovery part, the benefits of it, the health benefits of it. But one thing that I just I was like, oh shit, the power of breathing. Because when you get in there, for people who have never done it before, it's so painful. Like the amount of shit that goes through your mind, you just want to quit immediately.
Yeah.
But as soon as you start breathing, if you start breathing
properly into your belly, yeah.
And you start properly breathing into it, then you realize, oh shit, I actually can endure this thing. And I started applying that a lot through, when you have stressful moments at work, or when you have stressful moments in life, where you just take that extra deep breath and everything just clears out.
Yep.
I learned that from cold plunging. So all that to say, go and fucking get on a nice bath and freeze your dick off. That will fucking help you. That's for sure.
Wise words from Esty. A goodbye and good night.
Hey, look, we've done almost 2 hours. So I think we probably keep the rest for a different episode, because otherwise we're gonna keep going. And I've already been through like 3 of these vodkas, and
you got to save something when we get the Geese Man on here.
Yeah, we're gonna get the Geese Man on here. Geezy, you're gonna be our hero. And I think that was so good. It was exactly what I expected.
Really?
You're a fucking badass. Thank you for being here, and I'm so glad that you went through this introspection. I'm really hoping you find your Ikigai, because it's going to keep evolving. It's going to keep transforming. And all the best for anything that you do. Anything exciting that's coming up that you want to share?
Well, I'll be launching my new website first week of July, which is emmakirkman.me.
Okay.
So, that's just those things that I talked about. It's just going to explain the value that I can help create for teams. It's going to bring together whole EMMA, so yes. my passion around wellness and those sorts of things with my work in change and transformation. And I've got another course. I've got some digital downloads, and I'm actually going to relaunch my podcast as well. So
let's go.
It's coming up. Yeah, let's go. I mean, it feels like one of those projects that's never ending, but I'm committed. First week of July. I'm not saying which day because I might go right up to 11:59 on Sunday of that first week, but I'm on it.
Here's the thing. I've been, I went around trying to get this thing off the ground. I had an idea a while ago. I was like, oh, fuck. I talked to so many interesting people and I wish I could just record this shit so that I could, listen back to it. And I wonder if this will be useful for people. And I told the people at my work and they're like, fuck, you should do it. You got the attitude. You just fucking put it out there. And then I always question myself, right? It's like, why the fuck would anybody listen to me talking shit? Well, they could be listening to so many interesting people out there, right? But then one day I ran an experiment last year where I'm going in a tangent here, but I've always been a person that has lots of ideas. But I've always felt like an imposter. And I've never executed on them. I've always felt like, why the fuck? I have this great idea, but I'm not the right person to do it. It's just not going to happen. And then I see them getting realized. And a good idea means fuck all if you don't make them happen.
Yeah.
And then last year, for whatever reason, I realized, you know what? Fuck what everybody says.
Who's everybody? You mean you?
No, because I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but as a Colombian, I don't know. I feel this is it might be a New Zealand thing as well, but you always wonder what people would say about you. And doing this right here, putting a video out there when you're just talking shit with somebody and being quite honest about life, about work, about whatever, it's putting yourself in a vulnerable position, right? Mm-hmm. And you always think, what will people say? What will my friends say? What if they find this and they would just judge me? And what if I put this product out and they're gonna laugh me out of the room, And last year, I started doing this experiment where I was like, fuck, I had this idea. And instead of sitting on it, I'm just going to execute it and see what happens. And I did. So I basically, actually right here, do you see this artwork here?
Yeah.
You see that out there?
Yeah. Is that you?
That's all me. So I redesigned my house as you saw outside, right?
Yeah.
You see outside. We redesigned this whole house, and I actually built a lot of this stuff. I learned how to do building and stuff, which was quite a meditative thing to me. It was like a mental health thing that I love doing with my hands now. So I discovered that, and then I redesigned this whole interior and this whole house, and I did the artwork in the walls that you see outside.
Yeah.
And because I couldn't find anything that will display the message that I wanted to have in the living room. So I was like, fuck it, I'm a designer, I'll do it myself. And then I put the artwork out there and I designed it myself. And then I had people coming through the house going, oh shit, that's pretty cool. Where do you buy that artwork? And I'll be like, oh, I just did it myself. It's just, and he's like, oh, what does it mean? And people getting interested, can I actually buy that? And I'll be like, no, but would you buy that? And they're like, yeah. I was like, oh shit, I have a bunch of designs that I did. Let me just quick iteration. Let me make a website.
And did you?
And I did.
Oh, I've got to check it out.
And I did. And
well done.
I'll give you one for free.
Oh, thank you.
And I put it out and I did it. You know what? There's nothing to lose. I'm going to put it out there. I put a bunch of work that I did. And I was, of course, as I always am, I was thinking, nobody's going to fucking buy this. Who the fuck is going to buy this shit? Next thing I know, I'm sending shit to Germany.
What?
I'm sending shit to New York. There's photos that I took out of my actual fucking iPhone in my trip to Colombia that I digitized. I obviously fixed it up all beautifully and put it in the website, and people are buying it, and people are literally buying it from different countries. And that sparked something in me. I was like, holy shit, I always been doubting myself about this type of stuff. And the reality is, if you have a good idea, all you have to do is go out there and fucking do it, because otherwise it's just going to stay there.
Yeah.
And from that moment, I just started, whatever comes through my mind, I'm like, oh, fuck it. If I put this fucking podcast out there and 3 people listen to it, I don't give a fuck. At the end of the day, what I'm getting out of it is this meaningful conversation that will forever be in my mind, and it will forever help me build my life, build my career. And that's how this podcast started. That's how
Incredible.
that's how this shit
So
got. Yeah.
So you've executed on 2 ideas out of the idea hopper.
Yes. In literally less than a year or so.
Oh, you've got that bias to action energy. You need to
Yeah. So
ride that wave.
And it came out of nowhere. And
It never comes out of nowhere though. Like it was something unlocked it though, didn't it?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. It was there. I always doubted myself. And, I always was in a fear of being rejected too.
Yeah.
Like I always thought, like, for example, I was telling Brendan the other day, I was like, Brendan has hundreds of podcasts talking to the top designers in the world. There's no way that he will accept an invite from me to come here and sit in my fucking room talking to me. And you realize that if you don't try, then that fucking thing never happens. And I message him and I say, look, bro, I'm doing this thing. Do you want to come through? And he did. And, next week I'm talking to this other guy who, not in my wildest dreams, I would thought, oh, he would actually want to talk to me. Anyway, all that to say that if you don't try, if you don't actually push yourself to do this shit, then you're never gonna achieve anything in life. And you shouldn't be. One thing I came to realize is that there's nothing wrong with being rejected. There's nothing wrong with somebody saying or never replying to your message and never coming on. That's fine. Like being able to mentally deal with that is very important. To deal with failure, to deal with uncertainty, like we talked before, and just keep pushing forward. One thing that you'll realize when you start your podcast is if you put a podcast out there on YouTube, you're just a fucking pea in a fucking ocean. Nobody knows who the fuck you are.
I released 6 experimental episodes last year. So,
but here's the thing I've learned from that is that you just gotta keep going.
Yeah, I was finding my voice. Like I
just gotta keep going.
Yeah,
because you need to have your why in mind. You know what I mean? Like how obviously have you read this book called Start With Why by Simon Sinek? Yeah. Like he always talks about starting with why, right? And then you talk about how and what. And I now apply that to everything I do. It's like you got to start with asking yourself why you're starting this thing and being clear about that so that then you can execute on it. And if you start with a clear sense of why, which is, for example, this project that I'm doing with the Melding Muse, the why is just I want to tap into my curiosity. I'm not thinking of going viral. I'm not making videos reacting to shit that's happening immediately. I'm not a content creator in that manner. My message and my content is slightly different. It's just not going to be that. But I'm happy that I'm able to do this. And this is my why. And as long as I stick to this, that's it.
Yeah.
That's all that matters.
So good. I want to see the rest of the hopper, but maybe that's for another day. I want to see what other ideas are in there.
Yeah. So anyway, we did 2 hours.
For reals now. We're on the closing chapter.
We ended up like just that last fucking rat took a long time. Apologies, everybody.
Listen to this on 1.5 speed.
Listen to this in 1.5, which is usually how I do my product videos anyway. But Emma, thank you very much again for being here. We'll do another episode. We'll bring Ryan Gizzi. We'll once you finish your challenge, we'll spark another vodka.
Yeah.
Which is you're gonna bring from us in Amsterdam. I wish you all the best in your projects. When you have your podcast, we'll share it with everybody because I'm sure it's gonna be amazing. And for everybody who listened to this, thank you for your time. If you stick with us with 2 hours. Fucking hell. 2 random people talking about shit. But hopefully, if you're a business owner, you will make some impact in your employees' life. And there's so much information I think we talked about that is helpful for everybody. So thank you very much. Remember to drink water and exercise, and peace.